Hi, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our webinar, How Political Reputations and PR Measurement Works. My name is Cliff Chan, President of Active Community Engagement, A.C.E. I will be joining my colleagues, our founding president, Yan Zhao, VP Internal and Secretary, Benny Chu, VP and CFO, Scott C., to host today's webinar. Now, before we begin, I would like to give you some background information of A.C.E. and its mandate. A.C.E. is a non-profit organization whose goals are to serve our local community, support our young generations to engage in politics, and promote the awareness of municipal politics and resources. We will continue to organize events for our local residents to participate, so everyone will have an opportunity to take part, to engage and interact with each other in our community. I'm now passing the mic over to Yan to introduce our guest speaker for today's webinar.
Thank you, Cliff. So now it's the formal part of the section. So please allow me to introduce Eugene. Eugene is a digital public affairs, engagement and communication specialist and acting department head for the THEI, which stands for Technological and Higher Education Institution of Hong Kong. He currently teaches several undergraduate courses in the THEI and graduate public relations courses in the Department of Public Relations Management. He also works closely with the graduate program at the CUHK Medical College and College of Business and Finance in HKU space. Eugene is an accredited member of Canadian Public Relations Society and has extensive knowledge of social media and maintains a good relationship with the key online media and social media platforms across the Greater China region. Eugene's career, including 15 years of agency, branding, higher education, and municipal, brings a well-rounded perspective to his work in corporate communication and social media mixture. A former agency partner, social media digital strategy, and head of the digital communication unit of MTR Corporation. Prior to joining the MTRC, Eugene worked as the first digital communication staff in outer Hong Kong and Taiwan, where he led digital engagement and online brand communication campaign for clients which require social media and digital effectiveness of development. Given his rich experience in election campaigns, Eugene is one of the very few key players in the public sector utilizing and maximizing social media and digital communication, both for stakeholder engagement and issue management for crisis prevention. And one more thing I want to add is that Eugene is actually grew up here in Markham. And now I will pass the mic to Eugene. Thank you, Eugene.
All right, thank you, Yan. Thank you, Cliff. I think it's my honor to join today's webinar because as Yan has mentioned, that I was grew up in Markham. So I think it's quite an honor to share a little bit of what I did in work. So even though I know we do have the question and answer sessions, but anyone, if you want to jump in questions, feel free to ask. Because as you probably noticed, academia, we are very boring in talking, but by teaching public relations, which means we are not that follow the rules. So I know you guys probably will be more interested in some of the campaign works. So I probably can share a little bit about what I did in Hong Kong, because if probably you guys noticed that Hong Kong, we do have political campaigns during the elections. I almost get involved with every single elections that you can mention in Hong Kong, because this is part of my part-time job. So running campaigns. So it's especially on building your reputations. A lot of people may talk about how the PR management works and reputation works. Tentatively, I think it's mostly happened in social media. So I think if I probably will start a little bit with share my screens, if I may, so I can share with the slide. And of course, I can also share my, I think I'm okay with, if you guys want to get my PowerPoint copies, I don't mind to share with all the.
Yeah, go ahead. You can share right now.
And so I can share my screen right now. So just give me a sec, make sure it's right here. All right, I just want to double check if everyone can see the PowerPoint says the political reputations and PR measurement works. That's just double checking. You guys can see it, right? Good. I can see your thumbs. Good. Very good. So let me begin. I try to make it shorter because it's 36 slides, but I want to show you guys examples. So some slide I can just probably just go fast forward very quickly. So we will hopefully within this 30 minutes, just talk about a little bit on how you can apply the reputations and manage on the PR management in your own work. So when we talk about reputation management, I think more as a public relations practitioners, what we concern the most is about how we can measure the reputations. And then when we come up with some of the PR campaigns, PR work, or even like campaign work, we will always have to put back in the evaluations because we want to make sure if what we done, do we meet our objectives? And this is also part of what we doing in our university, what you learn in PR. We will talk about maybe like a framework that we'll use to do like our planning on how we can make sure that we can evaluate the result. So actually just take a very quick quote from Mal White, the CEO and the chairman from our board. He actually talked a very good sense about reputation because today nowadays it's all about a war for reputations. So as a company, they're also battling for anything that is unprecedented, extended because all reputation is about all your vital asset and also about the identity of artwork. So especially with the role, with the all the digital media and the rise of the technologies, it's getting much away. So for people who want to build your reputation, it's getting more easier because now you have multiple channels to do so. But on the other hand, if you want to make sure that to manage your reputations, like if you want to manage in the good deeds, it would make it more difficult because now your competitors can do the same thing against you. And this is very common in politically, like this is how you should think about how you stand yourself in the identities. And your identity is part of the reputations. So that's why we just talk very quickly about how we measure the reputations. Can you actually quantify? Like I can measure by numbers, because reputation is like based on the perceptions. It's about how I think you are. But meanwhile, and this is also a perceptions from all stakeholders or everyone who get involved with your reputations. So this is very comparative. And it can be positive or negative reputations, but then it could be stable, but it could be like enduring. So if you're asking me, based on within this 15 years of experience, reputation can be measured in quantitatively, which means we can measure by numbers. For instance, we can measure by your social media, like how many followers that you are. But follower does not mean everything because we also have to measure about the engagement, like how many people actually engage with your channels. So that is giving you the opportunity by how can you create what will be any backgrounds about that can be creating a virus by social media is really based on your engagement levels. If your engagement level is low, something that we don't suggest you to do something on a technically, like do not even bother to do Facebook retargeting ads. I can show you the slide about how you can run retargeting ad because this is one new way about how we do, like how to make sure that how is your folder can read your information because we want to target on these guys. You can actually done this by Facebook retargeting ads. This is something that you can done, but when I have to plan anything that is doing retargeting ads, that's only two factors that I need to consider. Either one way. Just like one of my clients is like a hotel in Macau because they can spend a lot of money on their advertising. So therefore I can also boost with the retargeting tactic. On the other hand, if your engagement is higher, then I have the confidence to do the retargeting advertising to do so. If not, your reputations can be created by a storytelling like viral post, which means it's not focused on your channel, should be focused on the messaging. So this is something that you can measure on a qualitative, which means you can measure by how many people actually recognize the message that you've been told. So this is how we can measure the reputations. So this is like the basic step that how we manage on how we do the measurements. Because when we look at this is actually a copy from the textbook. We talk about the corporate, like the reputation models. For us, public figures is combined with all the comprehensive reputations. So mostly for politicians, this is more like a symbolic sense than the function it could be. People actually already have the concept in mind. So they have many of the factors think who you are. So we just give you a few concepts about the new types of, doesn't matter about the corporate, the brand, or public figures. What is the reputations? So you think the reputation is built by the brand, they built by the advertising, or even they just building by word of mouth. So you can think about Facebook. What does the Facebook giving you reputations? First thing we can link with Facebook is Mark Zuckerberg. Then we can think about Facebook page. We think about we can follow people. We got all the story, and somehow I don't know why every time after we search Google, the advertising will pops up, and even we can think about Facebook. It sucks because they always block our posting, so on. So this is like what will be the linkage. And even on about for celebrity, how they build their branding. For LeBron James, it's very simple. He's cool, he's hip, he's hardworking. So what does the reputation is built by the brand, built by advertising, or built by just basically on word of mouth? Or it's like all of the above. Mainly it's all of the above. But sometimes we should think about advertising. We can just do it on something that is not, it's like non-payable advertising. For instance, you can post something on your Facebook for drawing attention. You can post something on Instagrams. Especially these days, it doesn't matter in Hong Kong, but almost everywhere in the world, we always argue about the Facebook, the reach of the Facebook. Reach means how many people actually read your post. One reach equals to one person's. The reach is dropping a lot. Yes, we are. Facebook is doing it because the reason is a lot of people posting on Facebook, even on Instagram, same thing happening. So that's why you can notice about why Facebook and Instagram, they launched the new function called Reels, because Reel is something that must be pops up in your newsfeed. It's guaranteed shows on your newsfeed. This is something for brand that can tackle the weaknesses from social media. So I think you can write on something that is on, or you can done on Facebook about Reel, in Instagram about Reel, allowing your followers to see what you are. You don't need to even bother to get them attention about press my like button or give me a comment. Make them read your post. This is something that you can have a new concept on advertising. So we always talk about when we try to think about how we build reputations, especially this is linked with your brand. We actually think of something that is totally different by, we need to think about something that is like authentic, like about, is there any story behind? Is there anything we can build like an ideal community? Like if you want to put this back in online, in a digital world, this is basically your fan base. So I think of someone, because I just noticed Alan is right here. This is our Markham counselors. So I think his ideal community will be combined with people, the Markham residents, the Chinese community he has strong network with, and anyone who cares about the especially on the policy and the community. That will be his ideal community online. This is his target audience. So therefore, if this is the community, he can start building his brand story based on the audiences that we can create, and we can even link it off. What are the paradox that we can thought about? What will be the effect we can bring across with the community? So this is about the community stand for your audience, your base of audience. So I think this is something we can think about on how we can have, this is something that we have to think about on how we are able to manage the public relations. This is what I've done for a lot of different companies as well. You have a lot of story to tell, you got lots of story to tell, but sometimes it's not all the topics of the story is related to the people who are interested online. So therefore, we try to identify who are the people that we want to target to, or who are the people we expect to be targeted to. Let's focus on the story that we try to tell. Sometimes too much storytelling is not a good thing. Because I do have a candidate back in 2020. He always mentioned about the neutralists in Hong Kong when we are quite like people having a radical Democrat versus the radical patriotisms in China. He's trying to make balance on both sides. He just keep talking about the neutralisms, but no one totally understands this. And actually, people actually have negative comments about what he stands for. So I think just by the way, what I did is We just change the storytelling. So the best way to demonstrate what is your positioning. Let's talk about your family members. He's come up with a very interesting political members. I will show you the video a little bit later, because his wife is pro-China, while his dad, his sisters are pro-democratic, and himself stand for neutral. So this is the best way to share the story to the Hong Kong citizens. This is what his ideology. So just check on his family. He stands differently in his family. So he will do the same thing in politics. So all in sudden in Hong Kong, everybody who watched this video, this documentary videos, because it's spread online. So everybody now notices his ideologies. So the story can tell very clearly. So I just told him that forget about what you want to tell about the US and China issues, just forget about how you want to balance the council, just share about what is your standing point. So this is on the second point about, it's a very clear meaning what we have to tell, especially like, because in the past, televisions, radio, newspaper, like the traditional media is like the only medium that you can able to tell your message. So therefore, you may probably just using the traditional way to tell your story. But nowadays, everyone, every citizen, I'm not pretty sure what are the statistics in Canada, but basically on the global levels, and especially on Hong Kong levels, 63% of the media consumption is based on online and mobiles, and almost like 45% is go through by social media. This is like a global statistic. So which means normal citizens, they're not reading, they're not watching the news, they're watching something what they saw that is pops up on their social media. So as a public relations practitioners, even as a social media expert, my job is to guarantee to make sure my story is pops up in the newsfeed almost every day. So this is something that I could start measuring the effectiveness. So therefore I can like reshaping the stories. This is what I learned in Taipei elections from Wen Jie. He actually he's very lucky. I think everyone else in the world doesn't have such long preparation for elections. In Taipei, you have 463 days of preparations. Because in Hong Kong, normally it's just like 72 days to 90 days. That's the maximum. I run for election too. I only got like 28 days. So this is something that is impossible what we can learn from Taipei. But what he done is he was building his identity. He was building his story. So based on what he expects from his fan base, he will try to target on those who like his post almost every day. So he just target on the people who gave him 7 likes per week. He categorized this ideal community and looking for what are something that we can done on viral, like the topics that draw their attentions. Therefore, he create the story for 463 days based on the people who gave him 7 likes per week. So it's 1 like per day. This is his target audience. So this is how he tried to he was doing like for animal rights, even talk about how to protect the Taipei cities, like how to keep the heritage. So these are the topics. He was also drawing the attention from the citizens. This is something like this. And the reason why people might they prefer what we call individual media, the reason is people having like this kind of anti-branding movement. I don't trust what the brand told me. I don't trust what the official told us. And this is also an interesting finding in Hong Kong, because Hong Kong citizens, the first source of news is from social media, from people sharing the news, not from the news media itself. And the government is going to the very, very low levels of the first level of sources. So which means this is giving the people ideas, people filtering what other people told them before they read the story, before they read the news. And this is also happening on consumer marketing. I make my choice of purchasing because Yan told me about what he feels about the product. I make my decision by this. So this is why we have to make sure that we post something on social media, on digital, allowing to people to read it and share the opinion. So we drive discussions, what we call user-generated content, UGC. So I think a lot of reputations, we talk about a lot of reputation risk, past, present, and future is all happening, like external issues, internal issues, all the incident happen externally, internally. This is a risk, what we call a risk cycle. But now we are shifting. We are not just preventions of the risk. We can come up with solutions about how we can solve the risk. and crisis, we might take it as a defensive, but we can also take it as a strategic capability on how we can make it and become a virus. So probably we can share a little bit about, and this is also giving the people about what are the good and bad crisis management can make a difference between, because now this is people will see how you handle, and that is being part of your reputations. And we always talk about this. Reputation is something that is for company and brand, and even for politicians. This is something that is a sustainable advantage, because this is aligning all the functions that you do. And this is also giving you by building the right reputation, by doing the right professional professional communications. What they're trying to do is they won't allow you to be marginalized, which means you don't speak out about a topic. We will always giving people about the views, the knowledge of the issues, and even giving a good advices. So this is what our jobs to be. So basically for populations, it's very simple. We're just putting something that is buried into something that is clear. So if you want to build the first-hand information in an online reputations, you better stand first about how you can explain that clearly. So I think this is become like a very popular trend about in Hong Kong. Is a lot of now the days of our Hong Kong government with the new administrations. They update their Facebook very frequently right now, almost every day. They want to give you the first-hand information in a very clear message, because this is what they understand. They are losing their media attentions. So the only thing they can do to catching up, post the Facebook as frequent as they could. As Edward Bernie always says, public opinion is a product of individual minds. So individual mind is make up the group mind. So this is why we have to forming like what makes the reputation works online is different than what we usually do offline is. I think the first hand pops up in a social media on digital. It becomes the first individual perspective. And what they think you are, then therefore it leads this way. And how can you prove this is true? I actually have a crisis management model. I don't mind to show this in a bubble on. We are trying to make sure that to change your viral, become the most popular search on Google. So we want to make sure the story that we're telling will because of the snowball effect to make everyone to search what we told. So this is normally how we explain like how we are protecting the brands. Well, we don't want people to keep viraling about what's happened on the crisis. We want people to share about what we have told to explain to them and make this become a snowball effect. So everybody will read this. And that is kind of like, because with your mobile phones, it changed the algorithm in your Google search. So therefore, when people want to search back the information, we'll search about what does the company told you instead of able to search what's happened at that time. So this is about how we are interactions that we are trying to build. So that's why we do have like different challenging facing so far as a PR practitioners, because I think we have to think about is always have to tell the truth. There's nothing that we can hide from the public, and we need to prove this by actions. So therefore, if you want to tell the story in a good ways, we have to think about we have to think about ethics and communicate ethics, which means don't play too much wordings. And I think and then we can talk about the social media. The technology always gives you the difficulty, because first, Facebook always changing the rules. Like we just talked about Facebook, which is dropping, even the IG, the Instagram is also dropping. So what next? Do we need to do like the UK and US thing about we do TikTok? Maybe you can, but TikTok currently right now is still only popular in the youngsters. So I think we can think about more tactic we can do so. I think I saw lots of people playing WeChat these days. I think this is also popular in the Chinese community, and even people might thought about Xiaohongshu, the little red book. There's something people always reading as a video because it's keep relooping the videos. And also with the globalization, it makes all the information getting closer. So I think this, and then let's talk about a little bit something that I think is more closer to what we want to bring up today's topic. It's like we look back on the Canadian federal levels about the political leader reputations. I know some people already left already, but this is actually we can capture from based on the last election so far. basically, this is the reputation we are building in the federal levels. I think out of 6, we already get our answer. Why Justin Trudeau is like the only leader we're giving a choice at the moment, because it's showing the diversity. We might not picking the conservative at this moment. And be honest, we understand the minority, ethics minority at the time, we are racist in somehow. And the Greens, sorry, because this is a too big policy thing, it's not fit for us yet. And others, you're either regional or you are in a very niche ideology so far. This is the reputation they give it. And even people are voting. So we just talk about federal system. It's very symbolic. It's not functional. But I think by looking at A.C.E, you guys are more focused on the municipal and even on provincials. This will be something that is diverse, because municipal is something that is on functional reputations than symbolisms. And this is why people might not giving a good choice. Like probably says Justin Trudeau is still the best choices among. Because I heard the story about our Miss Paul. She's not a trustworthy leader. She have a big argument with her party, Erin O'Toole. Lots of internal discussion with his party. Sorry to this guy. I know people talk about a lot of positive sentiment to this guy. We know, like we can read from the social media data, but unfortunately, this is not something we can convert into vote. So that's why I think this is something that is more related to the municipal. I think because when we look back on Vancouver, look back on Calgary and Toronto, it's a totally different ideologies. That's why I don't want to reference on what's happened on Vancouver with their non-party associations, or even on Calgary about what they are, because they're quite conservative and NDP focused. But this is reference from where it happened on Toronto Star. This is what they've done on the lab experiences on the political ideology types about Toronto. So normally we'll ask about basically your spot you stand for, your heritage, your laissez-faire, social democrat, and anti-establishment, post-materialism, so on. So this is done by Jennifer Bills and Toronto Star. So actually we find something that is interesting from all the survey they done in this survey. They find this in the political sentiments. Actually, there's something that's funny about, I think I'm not picking the full slide, but I can share this PowerPoint to you so you can read about the 10 interesting things to find out in Torontoian what they're looking at. Like the younger citizens are more radical and less nationalistic than the older citizens. And when we look back on the statistic, is that even to the senior and the youngsters, they're more supportive of the labor union, the wealth distribution policy, and multicultural ideals than those who are in the middle-aged citizens. And some of the social issues they have a strong divide between the downtowns and the suburban residents. I think this is something we find, especially the largest suburban and urban cleavage is on the traditional family values and gender issues, with the suburban citizens being much more conservative. This is something I find this is quite interesting finding, because I also noticed Markham Unionville is more conservative than those who live in Markham Thornhill, in a sense. Because based on, if I'm correct, I'm still right, I still remember people who used to live in Calton Road and Raymondville, those areas. These people are very conservative. If they still don't move, they are quite traditional Italian family in a sense. They're representing a traditional family values. They might look at something that is different. So probably if you want a comparison on downtown Markham or even comparison with North York downtown, it's slightly different because they might consider themselves as a suburban residents. They have a different value. So, and men are more likely than women to believe what the marriage is not an outdated institute, and much more likely to believe a traditional family structure are the central to a well-functional society. It seems to be the man is more conservative a bit. And I think this is also finding something that is on the ideological profiles Toronto what is actually quite relatively consistent and the behavior about the mayor elections. Like this is probably an understanding on why John Tory is already being elected, because as generally seen, this is a right-leaning centrist. They get the highest vote on the most left-leaning wards like Toronto, Danforth, and East York. This is something mostly there's this, like from my understanding, this used to be an NDP places. And Dufferin is a right-wingers, received the highest vote on the sharing two wards that is notably on left-leaning, like Scarborough East and Scarborough Agincourt. So I think this is something probably we'll find interesting part on how they are. So I think based on what this this ideology survey, giving us a very clear, like some of these definitions. Why, if you want to play around with the Canadian like election system, I think it's something that people always mistakenly is. I think you guys are much more expert than I do, but I think for municipal, it's true. This is always I remember what back in the days when Tony Wong and even on Juliana and even on Louis Tamakovsky always shared to me that the municipal is totally different than what you learn about in federal, especially in Markham itself is totally different. You should learn about what the photo was looking for. So why I want to put this in, why I want to share this finding is because it's giving you the idea. Do you like what kind of storytelling, what kind of message, the key messaging do you want to share to your like to like what kind of profile that you want to build up? So we actually construct about what are the populations, what are the people who live in the areas. So I'm not pretty sure if my hometown right now, I live in the fairway, so Kennedy and Major Mac. That should be in Ward 2, I do believe, because I used to call Ward 6. There should be a Ward 2 right now, what I call.
It is Ward 6 right now.
Oh, Ward 6 right now, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for because I haven't voted for two municipal election already. But I think this is something I want to also share about is about how to build this online reputations for politicians. It's all about the practice on we have to put like a planning strategy that helps to influence the public perceptions. We have to think about how we can influence the public perceptions, like how like people how they think about the organization, how they think about the individuals, and even to bring about like to pull this distance. So we don't want to keep this a distance away. We want to show that we are very close connected on the internet. So we also help, like this is something even on running a particular business. Right now in Hong Kong, a lot of SME, they've done very successfully on social media because they're doing a very close connection with their customers. But something that if you want to build this management, it's quite like hectic because you just spend a lot of time by like answering all this question by yourself because as an SME, because you are not going to running your own programming, like you're running your own chatbot that you can answer by computer is kind of like a huge investment. So this is something we can talk about what we can think of. I think this is something that we can done simply, not just by a person. You can do this in a small SME as well. I think there's a few things where you can think about how to construct this online reputation management. Like we can do brandings, put yourself in brandings. Like you can done this by Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. You can even write on Google. But when I talk about Google, it's not something that must be, you have to do advertising. Or maybe you can like writing, like when you do your website developments, you can do some SEO, which means you can do your organic keyword search. But in other ways, what public relations would suggest you can do on Google is try to get more story writing, which means get more media exposure. And this is why PR stand out in social media. Get more media interview. It helps you to like showing up as an online news. Online news is also part of the searching on Google. Building your reputation on Google is a major key because once people press about your name, your business, it's all about the things that under your control. Like make sure that this is what we always taught in the organizations. Make sure that you can control the first page and the second page. It's all the news that you're expected to be shown, like your official website. You can show your Google Map, you can show your Wikipedia, I can read your YouTube video, I can see all the news about you. That means that you've done very well on your online reputation management on Google's. So what we call SERP, search engine ranking page. So let me just type this, SER, search engines ranking page. This is something that we also make sure that we can measure this. So this is I can talk about the tricky way too. And you might even think about, is there any display banner necessary to do so online? Unless I think for this is mainly I will suggest to the company you can do so by why you want to keep display banner, because you're also doing your retargeting Facebook ad. People who read your banner when they click on it, after they go back to Facebook, because we track your ID. So therefore they read your information. We make sure that the advertising we place on Facebook is worth value. So the first ad you place is about just to reach everyone. But there's a second ad we want to place on Facebook. It's right on people who have visited your website. They saw your banner ad. They read the news that you mentioned about you, but you put your tracking cookie there. So we can capture all this ID as a retargeting ad. After they go back to Facebook, they go back to IG, they read your page, they read your story. We want to make sure that we can get this right. And even we can track about what will they do next, like do they purchasing something. And even we can work we can try to create more online content. So I want to speed this a little bit up. So the branding, I think this is something that is typically on what politician and political party, what they try to do is to be visible to people, because this is the best, this is one way they can indicate this is success. So that's why they have to think about what they gain, about what they stand for, the brandings. So creating a politician and party as a brand for such large population is focused on, we will definitely see this in the election, what they're trying to stand out. We talked about SEO, SEM already. So I think this is something about what we learn from SEO is looking for the right keywords that is related to yourself. Like, let's say I put Eugene Chan, what are the next keyword related to it? Try to use the word that the word that will pops up about elections, news, your name, maybe even your competitors' news. Use those words, put in your Facebook content creations, occupy them or hijack their keywords. This is one way we on social media campaign planning. We try to hijack a topic. I think something that we can share on about WestJet airline. What they do is they hijack Christmas. So you can think about Christmas promotions. It's not about Coca-Cola. Now it's about WestJet because they have some Christmas miracle campaign every time in Christmas. This is how they hijack the words. So this is some concept. We don't need to think about, it's a big brand. They do like campaign, like a hero-sized campaign. We can think about something. If let's say Yan is running about, he talked about on community facilities. So facility is the word that I want to hijack. Let's do about more messaging of a facility. Eugene mentioned about the facility. So you create 10 news or 10 Facebook posts, or even something you talk more about what you concern facility, you will override Yan on Google search. And even you can bring your Facebook reach higher in the same way. So I think this is something that we've done a lot on branding. Displaying is only about how you want to put the best placed banner, but normally for the size of municipal, in Markham, I don't think this is much necessary online, because we don't have much local media or local news to show up unless you're willing to spend efforts on advertising, because our displaying is quite traditional, like all those foot door banners and a banner on the street at this moment. But we can talk about the digital role, because what I want to talk about is, it really depends on how much budget you are. But sometimes I think something that I enjoy digital advertising on social media advertising does not require on how much money that you spend. It's only about how you do it in the right way. So I think I'll try to skip this part a little bit, because I always tell you about why we have to do evaluations. We want to make sure it's smart, which means something that can be measurable. So when we talk about smart objective, specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and within a time frame. This is what SMART will stand for. This is like what we always proposing, what kind of framework of objective. Like we are trying to do something. Let's say we raise awareness from percentage to percentage by when it happens. We try to set this something that can be measured. So this is the principle what we call about how to set off our evaluations. And this is what normally what in university, we will always suggest this is something you can do online as AMEC. Do your calculation on your campaign framework planning, because we want to make sure that the right evaluations that we can help us to like boosting something better result. Let's say after we put an objective, we put the input, target audience, research, what kind of activity we've been doing, what are the output, like the content material that we can able to reach audience, and see what are the outtake, like what your audience took from your campaign and how they react, and what are the outcome and what kind of impact they can solve. So we actually think, I'm not going to put too much about what we can done, but I think this is something about when you talk about your message, your communication output like normally what we call it, the senior people want to have their minds. So as a PR, the communication officer, they have to think about what we put in all the wordings, output, we push the message. So think about how people should react, different people, how they read the words. Like think about how we can target to the business owner, researchers, funders, media, politicians, so on. This is where to think about different individual people, how they react. And the reason excuse me if I can try to show you something on, let me just find a slide about on retargeting ad. I want to show you guys too. Sorry about this hiccups. I should put this earlier. Just give me a sec very quickly. I'm searching this. I'm searching the one to Facebook I want to share. If you guys want to have this slide, I don't mind to share this as well. Let me just do this sharing slides again, right here. Let me know if you can see this clear about digital framework campaign design. I just want to show about what does the retargeting ad stand for. I think it's something that is like how we do this on Facebook ad. This is actually 60% of this slide is from Facebook. If you want me to share this, I don't mind. It's about how you can put the ads. Normally, how we set the segments. Normally, we can set the segment by core audience based on what you want, like where you live, the age, gender, languages, what kind of devices that you use, what kind of operation system. So this is how the brand able to target on their right target customers. Because people who love to buy a lot of like new luxury stuff, like buying stuff, they must change their devices very frequently. So they might using a new operation system. But for people who might buy like the rich people, they might don't get they don't use the newest of the phone. So they might using the little older versions of their operation system. And even you can based on their interest. Normally something really funny about how you set what are the interests to the people on Facebook is given by Facebook about different categories. So basically you can set all this category as a core audience. Normally, if you want to do, let's say, there's a function in Facebook called lookalike audience. Let's say I want to target on people who love Eugene Chan. So we can play based on the core audiences we set, we can buy the ad. But turns out with this ad functions, they only give you 1% of the result because this is only the things that you set requirement as a core audiences. And this is what Facebook will suggest you to do. If you want to maximize your result 10 times more, to identify 10% of people who will like Eugene Chan based on the core audiences, you have to do something what we call, we need to sourcing out the custom audience that we use to do retargeting. So this is normally how a brand will do retargeting ads. Either they get their own database already. So this is why we have to always do membership schemes. So we can put this as a lookalike audience in CRM. They will identify 10 times more. So they can basically based on the numbers that you have, the number, the names, we can match the user. So second thing is what we talk about retargeting options. Why website custom audience matter? Because that's, sorry for my ugly drawing, but normally we can, this is something we call Facebook pixels, or even on Google Tag Managers. We were able to capture people who read who been go back to the website based on your Facebook ID. Even I put an ad on Facebook, doesn't matter. They go back to our website, few hours later, we track the ID. So therefore, when they come back, when they visit the Facebook, they will see the same advertising again. You can use this to do a retargeting ad. So which means if let's say 10,000 people reach out to this ad, only 100 people who visit my website. The second ad will focus on those 100 people only. So your money can spend wisely in a better way about, let's say, sign up for campaign, sign up for volunteer. Those 100 people might have a higher chance to register for result. And also for what Facebook will suggest you to do so is based on these people that you can retarget to. And the same thing you can done is people who watch the videos, because you can measure how many people actually watch your video by, let's say, 3 seconds, 10 seconds, 25%, 50% of like how many people, like let's say only 6 people have watched 50% of my video. Then let's focus on these 6 people. You can also use it as a retargeting ad. So that will pops up like case-based, will pop up a second ad that is only target on those 6 people who watch 50% of my videos. Based on all these 3 data sets you can collect, You can also place this as a lookalike ad on Facebook to boost your fan page 10 times more than traditional ads. And actually, I did share with my student about what I done in the past in a Macau hotel launch. What we done as a solution on campaign planning is we also planning every single vertical site partnership, which means we use a lot of content written about the new hotel launch is great on TripAdvisors, on other of travel website, and even on KOL bloggers. And we all put the tracking codes, right? Every single those content we wrote. Therefore, for those people who read either from my Facebook, from other people's Facebook, the banner ad, and even on those vertical website, once they visit the hotel website, when they go back to Facebook, we capture them already. So this is one thing that we can manage all these reputations in a measurement way to do so. So if you guys want, I can also share this slide to you guys, because this is also given to all my students.
Thank you, Eugene.
Don't worry. So I think this is so far this is the end of my presentation, because I know I've been overrun. So
thank you, Eugene.
Stop share this.
Okay, thank you, Eugene. Actually, we have a few questions for our audiences. And the first one, let's go by the Benny. Benny, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Eugene. The first question is how to build political reputation and the brand for business owners and young professionals who are interested in running for office in the future.
Good questions. I think the first thing that we need to distinguish is not about what are the business owner or young professionals. I think it's like, what are the reputation you try to build? For instance, I think this is something that I'm not doing a good job on my own, because I always be giving people the mix about who am I, like a social media expert, PR expert, politicians, or even academia. This is like giving people about too much information. It's not consistent. So I think a lot of people have done so well about how they build their reputations before they might think about running in office in future. Like some of friends of mine, they stand out about I'm a scholar. I stand out. I always respond to about the feedback about the policy feedback. So I'm a critic. So I think it doesn't matter of business owner you are or young professional. I think I always encourage people to run for office because it's making a good to society. I think it's besides what you can show about the concern about your community, like showing what you've done on a community affairs, services, sit in the committees to talk about the Markham that you cares, or maybe Richmond Hills. I think you can build your reputation about in your own way in benefit. We have to think about what are the objectives. Like, let's say, I want not just for running business, but I also want to build my own reputation in a good way to show I'm a professional. So therefore, if I'm a lawyer, I'll talk about some few point about as a lawyer what we suggest to do. Meanwhile, to show community, two ways. This is the true message storytelling that you want to build up. So I think for business owner, you can share about you succeed in business. You can do something that you return to the society, but also should show community. While for young professional, you guys should outstand what you're doing as a professional. While, like, I think Yan done a good job of how showing his professionalism in the sense. I read your WeChat actually. And the second thing I think he can add is to show his care about the communities as well. That can give people that linkage. Oh yeah, I recognize this. I recall that he do involve. I think this is the same thing that I've done is at least people still recognize about. I still keep during this COVID-19, I step out a lot on helping the people. So people actually can recall and linkage. I think this is something the reputation you can start building. I hope I can answer the question for Benny.
Okay, thank you, Eugene. And the next question is, how do you distinguish between a positive and negative campaign?
Be honest. Actually, I think you don't have good questions. I think for positive and negative campaign, sometimes people may say I come up with a negative campaign, but the result is good. Like Burger King, they burn McDonald's burgers, but this has become a good campaign. People find this is funny. So to me, as a definition, negative campaign is like your message does not come out. Like people, like if I'm telling you about what is my message, but Yan, Scott, Cliff, and Benny didn't able to get what I'm telling you. I think the one good example for negative campaign, Hillary Clinton's. Did she stand out her message? Turns out didn't. because Donald Trump outstand her in another way, because her campaign executions is very traditional, does not touch to the people. For example, about when they're doing the debate, you were receiving Hillary Clinton message during the debate. Do you think as a voter, do you want to watch the television for the debate, or you will read your messaging from a Hillary Clinton campaign? And it says it's not from Hillary Clinton, it's from Hillary Clinton campaign team. But what Donald Trump done in the SMS, he sent this in the midnight 3 a.m. after the debate, says it's a totally fake debate. It's not fair. So support me, support USA, vote for me. I need your support. This is how tailor-made he is. So if you ask me about what are the positive and negative campaign, it's not about on how they execute, it's about the result. So turns out every single thing what Hillary Clinton had done, Donald Trump riding on what she done and become his own campaign. Because if this is a very interesting finding research from after the elections. Donald Trump didn't even bother to do his own messaging, right, doing his own ad. Every single message he used in 2016 is all response to media, it's all response to Hillary Clinton's. People say he's done a very negative campaign because you totally do nothing, but he spent less money, he got his message, and he wins his elections. While Hillary Clinton, we review her campaign. She spent $100 million on social media. Do you think it's working well? No, the graphic is too nice, the video is too nice, but nobody watch it. It's the same. This is a common mistake happen on campaign. I think this is how I evaluate a positive or negative campaign. This is like a good example by, I think it's last time the election so far on February elections. I don't think the Liberal Party has done a good campaign, but luckily, yes, we don't have we don't have a strong competitor at that time. This is actually my comment to a newspaper in SCMP. He's suddenly lucky that he still remained, but because no one can outbeat him at that time. Not pretty sure next time. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Eugene. Yes, our next question is, if a person is telling the truth about some wrongdoings of one's opponents, is it regarded as a negative campaign?
I think this is something we call double daggers.
Oh.
Well, if you're on a debate, if someone is like highlighting what he done and you tell him the truth that he's doing wrong, and he cannot respond. So people do not judge about how you're against him. It's based on when I was picking on Cliff about his mistake, and Cliff cannot react. He hesitated. He's scared. He's worried. He's silent for a bit. His face looks awkward. This is successful. This is what we call debate planning. But in other hands, I think there's one good example from Richmond Hill back in 2008 campaign. It's about from Raymond Chan. He done the similar thing about telling you something wrong doing for his opponents. He suggests everyone can suggest about something about his opponents. But what he does is what he share about to his opponents. After what he did, people think that he's too being very bossy. You shouldn't do this because it's not worth it, because you are your re-election, and you shouldn't do this to your competitor, to your opponents. So I think when we talk about against your opponents, is choosing the right time and right place. And you have to understand what we can do is effectiveness. One, we can do this in debate. Secondly, if you want to prove the truth telling, you can do this in social media by telling the full story. Because people in social media, they believe there's a myth. Fact always win. There's nothing that you can says you're lying because you're telling the full fact. So you can write a very long story about what are the truth about your opponents, about what is wrong. Like what you told me is wrong because I do some research, blah, 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 based on this research, blah, 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 and show them the source. Done. Allowing people to share this. Then this is something that you can do in smart way. I hope I can answer your questions.
Thank you, Eugene. And we have another question. Yeah, Scott is going to ask the question. Hello, Scott.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Eugene. So I have another question. How effective is negative campaign?
I think this is something that we can talk about on when we're looking on campaign. Normally we have three ways to measure a campaign effectiveness. First, we can measure about how many people talk about you or the topic. We call buzz. Second thing we talk about is the share of voices. Where do people talk about your message? And last but not least is measure on the positive and negative. This is something we call the sentiments. So this is how we can judge on the effectiveness. So as I told you on earlier about what Burger King have done to McDonald's, people find this is totally acceptable. So this is negative campaign, but this is totally effective because based on the people, a lot of people talk about this. People talk about this everywhere. It's keep on rising. The numbers rising, and we find less negative than it thought. So this will be effective. But meanwhile, for negative campaign, this is why I think for effective is the main key. Like Hillary Clinton, she done a lot, but people does not even talk about her. Donald Trump do less. People talk a lot about him. Even maybe people who hate him will just remain to hate him. But he learned from all this data that he measures. He identify his voter because once you react, like this is what a bank institute will do. Wherever I post on Facebook, as long as Benny, Yan, Scott, and Cliff, you guys like my Facebook post, I can identify your profiles. So therefore, we can do something on your portfolio to do something to this. This is why this is also one of the KPI on why we run social media. So I think we can try to looking for the effectiveness. Well, maybe some people might not disagree with me. Like people always hate. People who does not love liberal, they always hate liberal. Doesn't matter. They're not my target audience. We target on the rest. We try to identify the missing people. So this is the effectiveness we look for. That's why in social media, with the rising on online media, I think this gives you a lot of room about sometimes negative campaign is not a bad ideas. It only depends on how you see the result. And maybe you can, why we always say in public relations, we evaluate, we evaluate. If something happened on the first day, the negative goes negatively, cut it. First thing we do, we cut the campaign. That's why we love Facebook, because Facebook still get all your money. Just cut the ads, cut the video, just let it go. Let's do next. This is why when we run as a campaign manager in Hong Kong, we always have to change our ideas. Maybe we have to change our message tone, and even we have to change our key messaging based on the need. Maybe we add something new right ahead based on where people talk about this and how we can prove what people can talk about this. I think I can share a little bit on what we can suggest on Google. You can do this search by google.com/trends. This is something that you can measure the topics. You can actually pick the geographical areas in Canada. You can pick on, you can just just let me do a quick search about in Hong Kong very rapidly. You can even type the words and see how is the discussion and searching are doing. So this is actually what we in the Hong Kong government, not this time, but back in the old time. This is what they done. They measure the keyword and see what kind of topic people, Hong Kong people talk a lot. They create story based on the topics, the keyword. When we find this is positive. If it's negative, we avoid this. So this is something that you also can measure about what we call effectiveness. So you can just press google.ca/trends. You can identify the Canada trends, and even you can set geographically on markups. So based on how they Google search, how they search this, is based on how many posts, how many click, search volumes, and how many people actually click reading this on a mobile phone, because all your mobile phone, either Android or iOS. iOS Safari is also connected with Google searching. So that is a very reliable sources. We can understanding what kind of keyword, what kind of topic can be effective. So we can write on this. This is also one of the things that we make changes.
Okay, thank you, Eugene. Yes, I have a last question from the audiences. It's does the character of being vocal help a person in building a good profile?
Well, I think this is definitely, because if you don't have any vocals, then I don't think any of the reputation have stand out. So this is also nowadays a lot of people love to being a guest speaker. Even myself, I love Yan's invitation. This is something that I want to be vocal. So this is also one way to how to stand out, because you guys helped me to create a good poster. So the poster, I've shared this to some of my friends already. After this sharing, I also posted on my WeChat and Facebook as well. This is something that we try to build vocal and doing the profiling, because people may not just depends on your, like, let's say your viral, but also with the opportunity with YouTube, like videos, YouTube, we can archive, searching history. And people nowadays, the millennial, the Z generations, they don't search on Google, they search on Instagram and TikTok. So which means you have to build your digital footprint, show your evidence in your social media, show in your Google. So people, when they want to search about, let's say I want to search about Bandy's background, like 2 years later, maybe because you're doing something outstanding. So I can look at, oh, this is what he done 2 years ago, blah, 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 blah. Always remind us, this is always good for every profile. And I still love my pictures that shows on 6 years ago when I've shared to the Canadian PR Marketing Advertising Society. I think this is good picture snapshot so far. This is why always being a focal is always good for doing your profile, because in one day you take advantage to it. And I'm glad that you don't find my drunk pictures anymore on Facebook and Google's. Like, if Yan probably know that my university life in York is drinking parties, but now you don't even find any of the drinking pictures. This is how, what does the good focal can develops on. People, like, even in Hong Kong is something funny. They always thought that I'm smart, I'm a genius because you study a lot, you're a double master, you have a PhD candidate, you are now a senior lecturer, you run PR. But and everybody knows, actually, in fact, I was graduate in York by 2.01 GPA, just barely passed. But no one cares nowadays. Even I shared this story, people think, wow, you are very positive in your life. I'll say, wait a minute, I think I enjoyed my life at that time, but this is people already build a reputation. Because you are teaching in an institute, you are being a young lecturer in Hong Kong U. So therefore you must be smart. That is already become a focal. Profile, this is how you develop. And this is something that I can share you a little. I help my candidate to change their Wikipedias every time. Make sure that all his bad story will change in the good ways. I never hide bad story because this is the ethics of PR. We cannot delete a news, but we can make the news become supporting as a good, in a good use. Then we can help them to do videoing, contenting based on those. We can even do assessment. When we help the candidate, when we do debate planning, we will always think about 300 questions to against him. I always tell my candidate, please don't cry for 30 minutes, I will keep criticizing you. And as long as you don't cry, you can go on for debate. You must win. Go ahead, go for it. So this is how we train. This is how the Hong Kong people call, we just keep on like against you for 30 minutes nonstop and see how you react. So the same thing about how you good profiling is, don't let your competitor to find out any bad things about you. Check beforehand. So that's why we call digital reputations. We always help clients to check anything that is, that must be something bad. Let's do something that we can do in advance. That's why I also do for business. We open a Google account, Google business account, because Google business account is free. So you can put your map, you can put your information on the right-hand side. You occupy at least 1 to 2 spots on your Google search pages. Every search page only have 10 search results. So this is something you can keep in mind. Try to own all 10 search articles in your own hands. Then that will be, because 99.9% of people does not go to second page unless they're doing homework. That's why make sure that on the first page, get less negative posting on Google. You will master your focal, you master your profiles. Then tell your story, because no one cares about the backtrack. They were asked, oh, how's Eugene behaved back in 2005? Nobody really cares about what I've done in the past already. People only care about what I've done in 15 years in Hong Kong. This is something I can give you as a last some takeaway.
Thank you, Eugene.
No problem.
Scott, you're mute.
Yes.
Yes.
So I think we'll have our closing remark. as we answer all the questions, right? Yan?
Yep.
Okay, so I want to thank our guest speaker, Eugene Chan, for giving us an informative presentation. I would also like to thank our audience for your participation. I hope everyone enjoyed today's webinar and has received valuable knowledge about political reputation and PR management. And A.C.E will continue to organize events and seminars to allow our local residents to participate. We are holding seminar at least once a month to keep you informed of the latest trend and development story in our community. And we are not finished with the political topic yet because we'll host a municipal election forum on August 27 from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. at Splendid China Mall. Please stay tuned on our social media for a detail. Please also visit our website, aceontario.org, to check out our upcoming event. On behalf of A.C.E, thank you very much for your support and have a wonderful weekend. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Eugene.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay,
Bye.
bye-bye.